Welcome to a Better Daily Show. My name is Gentry Jeevers. We have a very special guest with us today, David. His @ is America David on TikTok and Instagram, so make sure to follow him there. Let's give a little bit of background on David. He's a digital creator and political strategist. He's worked in local and state politics since 2020. He gives speeches and does political debates with Walkaway Campaign, Gays Against Groomers, and Washington State Young Republicans. A little bit about his family. He fled the USSR as a political refugee, escaping Christian persecution. On a personal note, David has overcome fentanyl addiction over 10 years ago and works directly with all those who suffer. So he's doing amazing work there. He's also been banned and censored for speaking out against the radical gender activists targeting children. So David, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for having me, guys.
So your family escaped the USSR. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that and tell us why?
Yeah, absolutely. So they escaped the USSR. They were literally political refugees. And I learned this like a few years ago when I was researching for my speech, actually. I knew that we immigrated here, obviously, but I didn't know that we were actually political refugees. So luckily, I was born free in Washington State, but less than a year before that, my parents left the Soviet Union in 1989. So even before the USSR collapsed in 91, they had fled. So my grandmother was sentenced to 10 years in a work camp when she was 19 because she was having a Bible study with her friends and they were discovered. So you're really not allowed any Christianity in the Soviet Union. And so she was sentenced to a work camp in Kazakhstan. And my grandfather also hated the Soviet Union, but he was conscripted to serve in the military. So he fought in World War II with the Nazis and all of that. And his dream for my family was always to move to America and live in America. He wanted to, but that never happened. He passed away before that was possible. But so that's what kind of informs my feeling and value in freedom and freedom of expression and freedom of religious belief, obviously, for sure. And limited government overreach. Like that's, I grew up my entire life hearing about a totalitarian regime that tried to not just control, your money or what you can do, but what you can think, and we're getting eerie waves of that now living under this regime. And then honestly, since the Obama administration. So they came here in 1989 and I was born in 1990. And then I didn't really get involved directly with politics until 2020, which I feel like a lot of people did that, actually. People are like, what the heck is going on here? So I started volunteering for the Young Republicans in Washington State. I started going to these events and dinners and learning more and meeting people. And I managed a couple different campaigns, one county council campaign, and then earlier this year, it's a sheriff for Snohomish County, which did not go our way eventually. But so yeah, that's a little bit of my background. Also, when I was 19, just like the intro said, when I was 19, I tried fentanyl for the first time when I was in Seattle with my friends. It was all of like the bougie kids were doing it, the East Siders. It wasn't like, what it is now, really. It was this fine white powder that was super expensive and extremely addictive. And, the people told me, don't ever do it 3 days in a row. I made that mistake. And then I found out what actual addiction was. And I broke out of that after I moved to Minneapolis for work for a year. And that was in 2013, I believe. Now I came back. So it's been about 10 years since I've, ever touched an opiate or anything like that. So God bless for that, for sure. I wouldn't be able to do that without my faith in my family. But that's also something so crucial to me, because I think both parties have completely dropped the ball when it comes to the fentanyl epidemic.
Oh, 100%. They're really not doing anything. The border's wide open. What is it called when they decriminalize drugs?
Yeah. And as if that actually works. I mean, we have places that have tried and things have only gotten worse, And the thing that's so infuriating to me, and what I always say, is that if my parents did to me what the state is doing to addicts, we would call that, oh my God, the word is escaping me now, but it's when you're letting it happen, essentially, like you're
Abuse.
facilitating addiction.
You're enabling it.
Enabling. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So if my parents did that to me, people would think they were really bad parents, but the government does it. And we're like, yes, that is compassion, that is empathetic. And it's really, really tragic. And then you bring in the whole border issue, like you said, that's, I mean, on another level, that's what's really brought it to epidemic proportions. And it's going to take a big shift. It's not just going to be throwing money at the problem, and it's not just going to be about arresting users. We have to be a lot harsher on distributors and dealers, for sure. And then we need to find people struggling with addiction ways of rehabilitating, because they're lost souls, like it's a soul that has potential to do something in the future. And that's a waste of a resource too, like human beings are the ultimate resource, and we don't know all of the brilliant people now that are lost in addiction that we could have doing something positive in the world.
Yeah,
So,
well, your story is like a fantastic example of that. The first time that I met you was at a GOP dinner. Was it Lincoln Day, or was it one of the bigger ones?
I think so. I remember it being a big one.
But you crushed your speech when I think you spoke in front of like 500 to 600 people. And it was all generations, and we know the demographic of the GOP, right? Especially in Washington State, it's all the stuffy, QAnon people who don't necessarily know how to have a conversation about politics. It's surprising how they even became successful, because they're just so out of touch. But it was really cool to see you, a ex-drug addict and gay. And you just went up there and crushed it in front of all these people, and like very emotional. And I think your story really needs to be told over and over and over again, because of, I mean, in a lot of ways, people who are in drug addiction and people who see those people it looks like they're lost souls, right? It's like, how are they going to get over this? It's going to be so incredibly hard, but then it's possible, right? And you're a testament to that. And now, look at what you're doing. You're doing amazing things, trying to get people to walk away from the Democratic Party and trying to keep people from grooming kids and the transing of kids. So I feel like your story, just to compliment you for a little bit, is just a testament, and it needs to be told over and over and over again. So it brings me to my next question. How'd you get involved with Walkaway and Gays Against Groomers? Because those are two pretty big organizations. Like, how'd you get on the radar?
So actually, it was that event that you're talking about in Bellevue over a year ago. The Jenna Udland, who was working with the King County GOP at the time, they were looking for one extra speaker, and they asked, because it was like Brandon Strauch was going to be the keynote that night. And they asked Brandon, because it was like half his event, it was the Freedom Foundation, not Freedom Foundation. It was the Liberty Dinner. I think that's what it was. And they asked him if they could bring me on. And I found out on a podcast like this. It was me, Jenna Udland, and Joe Rossetti. And she asked me live on the podcast. She's like, hey, do you want to speak at this dinner in 2 weeks? And I'm like, sure, And then I met Brandon Strauch there. He liked my speech. And we kept in touch. We'd had dozens and dozens of calls since then. He's a really, really incredible person with an incredible story, especially as it relates to January 6th. But then next, after that, I did the debate last February at the University of Washington with Walkaway. And from then, for Gays Against Groomers, I believe it was just being online and seeing their content, and then meeting the state chapter for Washington, Alex Krastowski, who is no longer the state chapter. She moved to Florida, as a lot of Washingtonians are doing. But we started talking, and they needed someone to head up the GAG Washington, Gays Against Groomers Washington Instagram page. I started doing that, started getting more involved, started making content. And I'm new to making content. I only started making videos earlier this year around March. And it's been cathartic, and it's been fun. And it's interesting how, like, when you feel like you want things a certain way in your head and you're kind of a perfectionist, it takes you so much longer to start. But I will recommend to anyone who's thinking about doing this, like, start. You're not going to get better unless you start, unless you do it. And I'm really happy that I did, because, and so are a lot of my liberal friends, because then it's given me an outlet to talk about politics instead of talking their ear off, so now I just talk to my phone, so they don't have to hear me lecture them in Washington State. So that's basically how I got involved with GAG, and I've done a bunch of events and speeches and protests with them, and it's a fantastic organization. What Jamie Michelle has built is incredible, especially in less than 2 years. It's been really, really amazing, especially seeing how much influence we've had over legislation in certain states. We've helped get legislation passed to protect children and give parents their rights back that are God-given and should have ever been taken away in the first place. So, yeah. And
that's great.
Yeah, and I'm blessed and humbled and to be a part of those organizations. And I did just speak at the convention a few weeks ago at in West Palm Beach, the Walkaway 5-year anniversary party convention. That was incredible. I think they're going to do another one next year. You guys should come for sure.
Nice. Yeah, I went to a rally with the Mom Army, and the Gays Against Groomers California chapter was there. I met Jen Martinez, who's one of the heads.
Yes.
Her and her wife are super cool. We need to do a collab together at some point. I will get a hold of them. It's been crazy getting all this set up with Breakaway USA, but what they're doing is incredible. So I live in Hollywood. I don't know if you know that.
No,
so
I
I've lived
didn't.
here for 13 years. And I was born here in Los Angeles, but not specifically Hollywood. And it's been so interesting to see how many people in the gay community are conservative. It's wild.
Yeah.
And I have people in my DMs all the time, friends that I have, that are saying like, "Hey, I really support what you're doing." And I never knew about this Gays Against Groomers, but I love what they post. So that account, that organization is growing so quickly.
Yeah.
And it's really a testament to see that humans from all walk of life still want semblance of normalcy. They still want to have things be normal. And I'd be curious to see where your take is on what this gender ideology is doing to children.
Oh my God, it's so dark and perverted what's happening, and what honestly has been kind of happening behind closed doors and in academia for decades, like with John Money and Alfred Kinsey, all of these things. Now, all of their theories about children being blank sexual slates when they are born, and gender being a full social construct, and or Kinsey believing that children are sexual from birth and like to explore, and there's nothing wrong with adult-child sexual relationships. We're seeing all of that seep into the mainstream now. And I made a video a really long time ago, or like a while, like 6 months ago, talking about how we've really moved beyond the point of normalizing child exploitation. We've moved into glamorizing it. Because, I mean, remember those ads? It's about a year ago where Balenciaga had those ads with those kids passed out on the couch. They had the Supreme Court case about cartoon pedophilia in a purse ad for Adidas X Balenciaga. I'm like, what is this if it's not an Easter egg for people that are into that kind of stuff, right?
Exactly.
And it's almost more concerning that it was an Easter egg, because if it was blatant, you could say like, oh, that's shock value. They're trying to get a reaction. But if it's a subtle Easter egg, that's like communicating to the initiated already, And that was what my concern was, is I kind of compared it to like high fashion and haute couture, is that people see these like crazy designs and they're like, oh, this is ugly. Like, who would wear that? But then you see all of the elite gushing over it and saying, oh my God, there's something there. So then it makes you think, it's like, oh, maybe I don't understand it. Maybe there's something there. And that's what we've done with child exploitation. I mean, the Epstein, it's like the Lolita Express, all of that. It's like the top of society. It's like kings and ex-kings, presidents, fashion designers, actors. They all have like these ties to this weird child stuff. And I think it's really concerning, because that's the overall image we're relaying. But specifically, sorry not to go off on the tangent, but specifically with the LGBT version of it, what I think, and what most of us believe, is that it's being used as like a sword and a shield to push through this radical gender and sexual ideology, because it would be harder to ram that through under heterosexuality, because heterosexuals are still, you're still allowed to criticize them, you know? But if you add the layer of like LGBT to it, then suddenly you're a protected class and you become impervious to it. And beyond that, I mean, the queer theorists of the 60s and 70s, they've been talking about pedophilia and boy love and all that kind of stuff forever. I mean, they think it's like a high society type thing because some of the ancient Greeks did it, allegedly. So it's like, it's gotten really, really creepy. And I think what's happened that's completely obvious to everyone is that they're targeting children now. I mean, they're teaching the sex ed younger and younger and younger. And they're introducing sexual themes and ideas to children at such a young age, even as something as innocuous as they make it seem, as like a gender non-conforming teacher or a non-binary teacher or something, clearly doing things with the way she displays her gender to make kids ask questions, right? Kids are curious naturally. And maybe that's a conversation that should be had with the parents instead of the teacher, right? So that's really concerning. And we're on a really, really slippery slope. We're on the slope. It's slipping already. It's not about to slip, you know? So it's scary.
I think one of the most corrupt things that has been done to children is the drag queen story hour bit. And there's actually a scientific paper that was accepted into journals by Little Miss Hot Mess, which is the creator of Drag Queen Story Hour, and where it specifically says that they want to read them into filth. And it says that it's done for a reason. And this is, it's so intelligent the way they did it, even though it's so corrupt, where the reason why they dress so crazy is because they want the child to position the drag queen who doesn't tell the child no, who allows them to explore whatever their mind wants to explore, and contrast that towards their teacher, who is very authoritative, who is very, no, you have to do it like this. So the child naturally wants to gravitate where he has the capacity to just let his mind run free, because our educational system is not set up for that. So they prey upon that, and they make the children curious to live queerly, which, you know, of course, it doesn't mean gay or bi, trans. It just means different than whatever normative meaning that we've given normal.
Exactly. That's literally the point of it. If you even read like the early queer theorists, their point was to destroy cultural norms and traditions, the breakdown of the family, the breakdown of the male, the breakdown of the female, and then obviously you go after the children after that. I mean, they've already demoralized men to such a degree that they're afraid to stand up to a woman that's getting beaten on a subway. So maybe they're going to be even more nervous to talk about something that's like LGBT framed, you know? So they really were slick with how they set this all up. So once they do land the attack on the children in subtle ways, it's going to be accepted to a certain degree. I mean, obviously there's voices like ours that are speaking out against it, but they've laid the groundwork for a really, really just malevolent plan. And it's, and the scary part about it is that they hide it in this like virtue, and that you're being accepting and empathetic and open, and young people don't want to be bullies. That's like the worst thing you can be, is like a bigot or a bully. So they make it under that framework of like, no, your parents are actually bigots if they don't approve of this. And you're being bullied if someone even asks you a follow-up question about your ideas about gender, you know, like you're not allowed to contradict them or anything. So it's dangerous. They've set up a way to make themselves basically impervious from criticism, and that's not a good place to be. It's like a sacred cow, you know, it's like the new golden calf that everyone has to pray to, and God forbid you say anything negative against it. I mean, listen, like I'm not straight, obviously, but I've been called a Nazi, like anti-transphobe, like all, it's like ridiculous. So it's like, you have to let it roll off your back. It doesn't mean anything. It's like, it's a cheap attack. It's like Alinsky style stuff. So, yeah, that's why it's important. I hear this from straight folks and parents all the time. It's like, thank you for doing this, because we're too afraid to speak up, blah, blah, blah. But the point is not for us to just like be the conversation. It's a point for us to, yes, like spearhead it a little bit, but eventually everyone's going to have to talk about it, because honestly, it's y'all's children, you know, it's not ours mostly. I mean, obviously there are gay parents and everything, but I'm saying the majority of it, you know, it's going to be straight parents. So everyone's going to have to take up the fight soon. And I hope the church does soon too.
So, but one of the problems that I've run into, and you definitely have run into this too, is that when you do talk about it, especially on social media, they just shut you down. Like I've had a ton of videos removed talking about the trans issue. I know that you've had a whole TikTok removed on that. Can you
Totally
tell us
deleted.
a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it was really it was bad, man. Like I've always been very careful with my content. I don't censor my beliefs, but I do I'm careful with my language. Like I don't want to be salacious, I don't want to be incendiary, because I'm not trying to preach to the choir. I'm trying to like change hearts and minds a little bit, and trying to change the image of someone who's like speaking about these kinds of things. So I am careful with that, and it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter, because I got mass reported by a bunch of people on TikTok for going live and not like towing the narrative, you know? So they have the most like rabid activist people that get activated online, and everyone says this. Actually, I had an amazing like hour-and-a-half conversation with Nicole Sorotek from America Frontline Nurses, who talked about all that the COVID stuff, and now she's working with children who are suffering from complications with their surgeries and hormones and all of that. I mean, like a 12-year-old with osteoporosis, right? And for speaking out about that, she's gotten worse pushback for speaking about the gender stuff than she did about the COVID or anything else, right? So she's had death threats. She's had literal pedophiles threaten her. I mean, it was horrific. Some of the things she told me, I like couldn't believe them, and I was like, "Damn, you're incredible for still doing this." But it's because they have this rabid base that will go after anybody and mass report them. But then they also have the companies and the algorithms on their side, right? So it's all set. Again, they've laid the groundwork to, even if we have the truth and facts on our side, we're going to be stifled, we're going to be censored, we're going to be shadow banned, if not outright deleted, like my account was. And it was really bad too, because it was at the time my video was going viral, the first viral video I've ever had. It was almost at 2.3 million views. So many people were talking about it, so many people were sharing about it. And then they completely delete my entire account and don't even tell me. They give me like a vague reason of some sort of policy that I violated, but they wouldn't tell me exactly where or what I said. So they always keep it vague so they can use it however they want.
And David, sorry, when you said that they were coming after you for not towing the line, are you talking about the LGBT line or what?
Yes.
What? Okay.
Yes. So basically saying that, I don't know, kids shouldn't be put on hormones when they're 12 years old, you know, like, and
controversial take.
Yeah, exactly. Like, gosh, arrest me already. But it's like, it's the most basic things. And people say this all the time, but it's like arguments that are made now. If they were made 5 years ago, nobody would even, or I guess like, let's say 7-8 years ago now, like nobody would look at you different. But we're careening off a cliff so fast that it's every day the new thing changes, so that a whole other group of people can be ideologically wrong and you can censor them. You know, it's really, really Orwellian is what it is.
It's interesting that you said that about not towing the line, so they came after you, because that's exactly what I didn't feel it, but I discovered it, and it really affected me. So I was walking back from the gym, and I saw this protest. It was a trans activist protest, and I want to interview some trans people to just kind of really talk to them. And there was a group of like 5 people, and just screaming very, very like raw, just, and one had a trans activist written in blood on their shirt. And I approached him and I said, "Hey, listen, in the middle of this crazy protest," I said, "I'd like to interview like a trans activist on my podcast. And I wanted to know if any of you would like to be on my podcast." And I said it just like that. And all of a sudden, these people who just were acting so crazy and, screaming, they got really shy. Because it was more like personal. I was talking directly to them, not talking at them. And they were kind of quiet, like, and I said, they were like, "What?" 4 said no. 1 said, "You know what? I can maybe connect you with someone to talk." I said, "Well, no, I want to talk to you. Like, you're a trans activist. Like, it's you." And one of them said, "You know what? I'm willing to do it." Perfect. So we were exchanging text messages. The morning of the interview, they reached out to me and said, "You know what, Fabian, I apologize. Like, I really want to go on, but I'm afraid that if I say the wrong thing, they're going to get mad at me." And I said, and then it really hit me. These people are not individuals. it's a cult. They have to, and like you said, toe the
Mm.
line, or
Mhm.
else they come after them. And honestly, I felt sad for them because they're doing all these things. They're spending their time, their effort, their livelihood promoting something that they can't even that they're not an individual, and it's sad. It's really sad.
Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, one of the worst examples of that, and you can see this by going on Reddit anytime, but me and Nicole were talking about it because she's like a direct nurse and literally treats patients like this. But on certain trans Reddit forums, people will talk about their surgery. So these are obviously pro-trans people. They went ahead with the whole thing, right? And they're posting about complications that they have. And they're qualifying every one of their statements. I mean, they're like, so I still fully support children transitioning and all this, but I'm having this crazy discharge and really bad pain and I can't pee right and all that. Yeah, like it's crazy. And inevitably, under every single post, you will see someone come in and say, it's really irresponsible for you to be sharing your personal anecdotal experience because the right wing will use this against trans people. Or they'll say this will discourage kids from seeking the treatment they need. And it's just like, my God, it's like the cognitive dissonance or like the absolute brain conditioning that takes. It's like your body is falling apart and you're afraid to say anything because this hive mind will come after you. And that was like, oh, that's just jarring because at any point, just like out of humanity, someone is suffering physically, medically, like let them ask for help. You know what I mean? It's like, it's just so weird. That's why I'm like really proud of all the work she's doing. And we're going to be collaborating here soon too. But I feel so terrible for those people because they're so encouraged and pushed into this and saying, you know, we're going to affirm you. We love you. This is your new family. You can abandon your old family, abandon all of your old beliefs. But then if you step out of line, they will come after you.
It's
like
a cult.
Scientology.
It is a cult. Like I was about to say exactly like Scientology. They label you, they label you a suppressive individual or a suppressive person, and then you're banished. You're completely banished. And I'm thinking about how deep you would have to be. So let's say you go through the sex change. You're like, guys, I did it. Accept me. I'm all in. At that point, if you don't align with what they want you to do, then you're even more of an outcast than you felt before because now you've done this irreparable damage to your body. So where are you going to go? It's a scary thing. So they can essentially pull you in as much as they want because you have no options at that point.
Yeah. That's why I always try to say to people on our side as well, like Fabian, Gentry, like all of us, we it's really easy to be like reactionary to some of those things, but I try to look at it through the lens of people that are like suffering with this stuff. You know what I mean? Like we have to also be compassionate with it because we have to be able to let them know that they're welcome to come to us and we will still respect them and, you know, and love them if they need that and they need that care because we're not a cult and we will accept outside people because like you said, they're going to be super isolated from everyone. They're going to feel like they don't fit in anywhere. And I honestly, I feel sorry for them. And those parents should be studied because I feel like it's like Munchausen by proxy, but like Transhausen by proxy, you know, I feel like they just want the attention.
So is that who you think should be blamed is the parents? Because I always think like, okay, it's not the kids' fault because they're learning everything in real time and they don't necessarily have a lot of the wherewithal to understand what's going on. But like, who's really to blame for transing all of these kids?
Oh God, it's an amalgam for sure, but I think parents have to take the lead on that. You are responsible above anyone else, above the government, above a doctor, above anyone else for the health and safety of your child, right? So parents have to be held accountable for that. But also, I do feel bad for the parents too, because they go to these predatory doctors and counselor or activists masquerading as counselors or therapists who will immediately say, if you don't affirm your child, they're going to kill themselves, right? And that's every parent's worst possible nightmare. Like you'd rather have your child die in an accident than kill themselves because you will blame yourself for the rest of your life. So you're putting the fear of God into these parents and saying that, do you want to, you know, the common thing they say is, do you want a dead son or a living trans daughter, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, parents are going to err on the side of protection or safety for their kid in their mind, what they think is protection and safety. And then you have President Biden coming out and putting out a statement saying, the best thing that you can do for your child is affirm their gender. So that's that's so dangerous. That is so dangerous. First of all, he has no idea what the heck he's talking about. Like, you don't just, that's not therapy, just going in and affirming every thought that somebody that sits in your chair has, right? Like, otherwise there would be a lot more like psychosis in the world. But it's like we're doing something that's completely counterintuitive to everything, to like what we know about psychology, science, about just human nature. But like, I forget who made this quote, but ideology is more powerful than any of that. Ideology will get people to ignore their human nature, ignore their own safety and self-preservation. Like, we had that one actor that's completely different, but that one, I think he was like a BLM activist or something, and he approached that guy that was on the street after like some fancy event. He was like some Democrat activist, and he got
Yes, in New
stabbed to
York.
death in the street in front of his girlfriend. And then the girlfriend wouldn't cooperate with police to help find the guy because she's like, like, that kind of stuff really lets you know who you're dealing with. It's like you're dealing with people that will actually fall on their sword because they're so conditioned.
And if you go to Mao's China, that is exactly what the goal is, where they had children report their parents to the commissar if the parents were saying anything anti-communist and against Mao, and they would literally take the parents. And there's a story about a parent. This happened in China in the 60s, where a child put the parent essentially in communism jail, or re-education, and the child would walk by to go to school every day and pass the building that his mother was locked in. And the mother would wave out the window, and the child refused to see the mother until the mother was deemed re-educated. That's the kind of level of a malevolence that they want to instill in people. So this is absolutely part of their plan. We're seeing Mao's Cultural Revolution all over again, but where Mao used Han supremacy, now they're using white supremacy. But the end goal is no different than what's happened in the Soviet Union, in Hungary, back in the day, and all over the world.
Yeah. I mean, it's all basically regurgitated cultural Marxism. Like, it all comes from one place, you know? So when you see that, like, the main goal is like the destruction of the family unit, of the colonial white person, of Christianity, of anything that kind of built the West, that's what they're seeking the destruction of. And the LGBT whole thing has probably been one of the most effective of any of the tools they've used, of even race, besides maybe the feminism, because that's been even a longer game. Been the most effective because people are less likely to criticize it because they're so scared of being called a bigot.
So I have a question, and this this has kind of plagued me for a little bit, but the LGBTQ plus IA 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Ampersand,
Like,
yeah.
it seems like they keep adding letters to kind of go on this group mentality, this hive mentality. How many more letters do you think they're going to add? And do you think that's actually a good thing for the world? I mean, because in my mind, like, it should be gay, lesbian, like queer. Like, to be honest, I don't even know what queer means. It just seems like it's a catch-all for this whole thing. Like, why can't you just be gay, right?
Right.
Like, because like even with sex changes, they only give you 2 options, right? So there's not like 69 or 720 genders that you can be. Like, it just seems like they're trying to appropriate this weird movement and try to catch this hive mind.
100%. And they do that to piggyback on everything that came before it, right? So they're basically trying to equate, like, us millennials growing up in the time of seeing the whole gay marriage battle and blah blah blah, and then the older generation seeing like Stonewall and the discrimination against people with AIDS and things like that. So they're basically saying, oh, this trans and queer and your kids looking at all this stuff, that's just the next step of this natural acceptance and empathetic approach that we're taking, when really it's a way of rewriting history and disguising with every additional letter. They're erasing the past letters prior to that, because they've already rewritten it. They basically said that a trans woman threw the first brick at Stonewall. It wasn't a trans woman. It was a drag queen who occasionally dressed up as a woman. It was a gay man. And then there was also a lesbian involved. So they literally rewriting history, even if it's eating their own, right? Because the gay and lesbians aren't like oppressed enough, you know? It's like there's this hierarchy, and the TQ plus is the top of that pyramid right now. And that's extra dangerous because that also brings in the self-ID folks, right? So people that don't even go on a drop of hormones, nothing. It's a 45-year-old man that's like, I'm a girl today, and I'm going to go into the little girl's room and try to ask me about it. And that sounds like fear-mongering to the left, but we've literally seen videos of people threatening that. So
yeah, I mean, there's a sick video of this guy with the boner in a skirt. Like, I'm like,
I've seen it, unfortunately.
Weird.
It's so bad. And there was this other, I think the person was arrested, I'm pretty sure, because the FBI got involved because his threats were so disgusting. But it was this trans person who was an open pedophile and threatening Christians and Republicans with like sexually assaulting, he used different words, sexually assaulting their daughters in the bathroom. He's like, I'm going to find your daughters in the bathroom. There's nothing you can do about it. I'm going to be in their bathroom with you. And my first initial reaction to that, because it's very close to when it happened, they leaked everything he said and it was already in the press. I had a little bit of like a different POV on it for a second, because I'm like, they took them like 8 months to release the trans manifesto, you know? Why are they releasing this to the public like so blatantly and obviously? I think they're really baiting some sort of like conservative violence so they can have like their trans Floyd for 2024. You know, they need that. They need like a victim martyr.
They're waiting for it. They are waiting for that to happen.
They're desperate for it. And I mean, like, he literally threatens like Republicans, right? So he's like specifically calling people out. But yeah, he said absolutely disgusting things. Like, I don't even want to repeat. But I was taken aback by that too, because I'm like, why is this released to usually they're so afraid of like putting out the wrong image about somebody, you know, being like, oh, this is going to be a horrible stereotype that LGBT people are pedos, or that, you know, Black people are criminals, so we can't ever talk about those kinds of things, you know? So it's like, it prevents them from just covering certain things honestly. And again, I'm not saying LGBT people are pedos or Black people are criminals, but it's like this thing, this filter that they have by the way of processing the world, where they won't acknowledge those kinds of things. So I was really surprised that they would let that come out. And I'm like, I even posted on Twitter, I was like, guys, like, he deserves everything that he gets, don't get me wrong, but like, don't take the bait. We can't do this, because then it's going to be completely used against us. We're not as good at optics as they are, you know? They've mastered optics since like the 60s, like with all the Alinsky stuff. So
yep. So do you think that that's why Bob Ferguson is coming out with this trans bathroom issue? I don't know if you saw that, but he is trying to get a whole bunch of other attorney generals to basically wage war against Idaho, because Idaho has this new bathroom law that says if you're biological male or woman, that's the bathroom you're going to use. I don't know if you saw that, but he came out in a very, very strong stance
for open.
You can use whatever bathroom you want. That's essentially
gotcha.
what he's saying. And he says he has 21 other attorney generals on board.
Yeah. So I just think like it's like become the culture war issue of our time, you know? And I feel like it trumps most other issues besides like maybe abortion. They could probably equate with each other because we're talking about the future of children and the lives of children. But this one, I think I haven't heard the specifics of that, but him coming out so strong, I mean, it's election season, so it doesn't surprise me. You know, they need something. And I mean, like, my God, like, I get it that is, it's a bigger issue for our side, right? Because it's about the safety of people in the bathroom. For them, it's about affirming their gender. So it's like, you're really going to make that your like calling card issue for the left. You know what I mean? It's right. Like, and that's what I try to tell people. It's like, even if we can be wrong, especially with like gag and all of that stuff, it's like, I'm going to err on the side of protecting women and children versus erring on the side of affirming adults with, you know, mental struggles. So I would like, I'm going to fall on that sword for sure. I don't care what I'm called, but it's like, I get why we're defending it so much, but for them, it's like all about their own affirmation and kind of this whole like egotistical affirmation stuff.
I get why they're doing it.
Sorry. Yeah. It seems so strange that, you know, Bob Ferguson is running for governor in Washington, and Washington has so many problems. Crime is through the roof. They have to figure Seattle out. Taxes are insane. And I mean, if they pass the state income tax, then all these companies are going to move out of the state. And this is what he's talking about. He's like, let's go farther. Let's progress far. To progressives is like, what are you progressing to?
Exactly. And I think that that's also a clear and cheap play for the youth and for Gen Z, because obviously the youth cares more about cultural issues than anything. You just need to give them a victim and they'll stand behind that. So I think that's his play to get national support and attention from like the LGBT caucus or whatever, and then also get eyeballs and support from like the youth that think that's their civil rights issue of the day, is to get, you know, Mr. Tran to be able to walk into a bathroom and pee standing in a women's bathroom.
Well, if you think about it from their perspective, it's brilliant. Again, it's a horrible thing, but it's such a small issue, right? But what it does is, if you allow it to happen, and the people that say, you know what, yes, let them use the restroom, what they're essentially saying is, I'm going to make myself uncomfortable when I'm using the restroom because I'm trying to appease you. So I'm taking away from myself from what I know is to be normal, and I'm allowing you to uh, get in my space. So if you can start allowing or having people allow that to happen, where you give a part of your personal space because you don't want to offend people, that's all they need. That's that seed to be planted, because then they can push the boundaries and the boundaries until you give everything up.
Yeah. And it's funny how quickly they forget about their previous favorite protected classes, like women and gays, you know, to go in favor of this.
Yeah, you guys are old news now.
Smaller, like it's women are like, but it's like women are like this much of a group, gays are like that much of a group, and then trans are like over here, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And they're going all in on that, because the smaller the minority, the more oppressed the minority, the more pull and push they feel like that they have, and the more like guilt tripping and virtue signaling that they can do. So yeah, it's definitely a smart strategy because it works. And I like made a video about that recently. It's like, if you really think that the leftist politicians give a flying F about minority rights, about trans folks or anything, no, they don't. But they know you do. They know the Democrat voters do. So they're trying to play on your empathy and your openness and use that against you as like a sword. So, and they do it really, really well. And that's why, I mean, I know I've talked with Gentry about this. I've talked with a lot of people in our like generation that are in politics about this, is that we need to get so much better at optics and working the culture on the right, because like we've completely relinquished the culture to the left, and like everyone knows that politics is downstream from culture, so we need to start winning back that culture war a little bit.
Yeah. I think I said this yesterday on the podcast with Gentry, is what they hate, what these leftists hate, is to see people happy. Because if they're unhappy, the more happy you are, the angrier they get. So one of the ways I believe we can win the culture war is by having people that are happy show that they're happy. Just say, listen, here's my family, here's Christmas. I like what I like, and I'm not just, this is what I do. Just don't. And you know, another thing is, and I realized this, especially when I went to that rally with the Mom Army and Gays Against Groomers, is they had Antifa come and provoke the people that were rallying for a good cause, to get them to do something, to act out. Like you were saying, they're waiting for that trans Floyd moment. Yep. All of a sudden, I saw someone who wasn't part of the rally, a woman, walk up with the camera and start filming right before the event took place. So I'm sitting back and I'm watching, and I'm like, all this entire thing was planned.
Yep.
It's just incredible the way that they plan everything. Like there was nothing organic about it. It's all pre-planned for a specific reason. It must be horrible to live like that. To try to just be duping people all the time.
That's that a lot of that comes from like Saul Alinsky and his rules for radicals and all that stuff. It's like, don't debate ideas, don't go after the groups that support them, literally just eviscerate the individual and ruin their reputation, destroy them that way, destroy the optics of them, and then nobody will want to listen to them, right? So just label them as something, and that works beautifully in our culture because we have this obsession with minority politics and all of that, and they've used that as like the best cudgel and shield, I don't know, since ever. I mean, arguably they've used it better than the Soviets or the Nazis or the Maoists, because it's gone on forever, and that it's still kind of subversive and hidden. Like people don't really realize what's happening. But now the propaganda has gotten so mainstream. It's seeped into Disney, into music, into everything. So people are like, okay, I'm like gagging on it now. I'm like, can you stop? Like, this is like, it's too much. And like, I'm sick of seeing gay characters and non-binary and trans characters everywhere. It's like, oh my God, I've seen more in media and film than I've ever have in my real life. And it's like, I used to go to gay bars and stuff. Like, come on. It's like, it's just annoying. And it's actually making genuine homophobia rise, because now people are equating like all gay people with these like very radical activists who want like to brainwash your kids and cut people's genitals off. So it's like, that's why gag is so important, because we're like trying to separate ourselves from that. We're like, listen, not everybody thinks this way. Actually, the majority of us don't think this way. It's just the loudest, squeakiest wheels that are getting all the media grease. And we need to be like speaking up more and more and more. And that's why gag was so successful, because there's a hunger for that. There's a hunger for people to see like sanity and normalcy and just like logic in different populations that have been pitted against each other for decades now. Like it's gays versus blacks versus whites versus immigrants versus non. It's like, it's a lot more nuanced than that, and then also a lot more simple. So I think a part of it is, you know, having these conversations, and then also, just like you said, like displaying who we are, and like being, I think this is from the Bible, but like, or I know it's Christian at least, but it's like being like a joyful warrior and being like a joyous warrior, like not just being like mad and angry all the time, even though the world deserves that, but like showing that we have like the happiness on our side.
Yeah. To your point though, with all the woke propaganda, the gay, the trans, the non-binary, like in all this media, there is a pushback, and we're also seeing it in numbers, in music too. So when rap fully went mainstream about 10 years ago, it had hit its peak, I think, because it was such a rebellious movement, right? It was kind of going away from the previous rebellion, which was rock and then alternative, right? And so now rap is at the peak and is starting to decline in a lot of ways. We're seeing a whole bunch of country artists start to make the same kind of money that these rap artists were making. They're filling stadiums, they're hitting number one songs, and it's really interesting to see, because there is this kind of rebellious movement in the US, and it's starting to rebel towards tradition, right? Because country music is all about, you know, having a farm and a truck and a wife and having a dog and breakups and normal stuff that most people are gonna go through. Whereas rap is like, you know, let me just go and, you know, hook up with everybody that I can and sell drugs and go shoot people. Like, no, like there's very few people in the US that can actually relate to that. And so I think that there is a almost pseudo rebellion trying to go back to tradition, which I think is a really, really good movement. And we're seeing it in the numbers, right? Because of conversations like this, conversations that bigger platforms are having. And I mean, they're also making really good music. Rap music is gone downhill like crazy. Like I was into rap in early 2000s, right? Lil Wayne, Drake, Eminem, like those guys were just crushing it early 2000s. And now it's all this like mumble rappers talking about like depression, and then Lil Nas X coming out with like, you know, let me just have sex with the devil. I'm just like, what are you doing, man? It's just strange.
Well, I don't know if you heard, but apparently, as of yesterday, I read the story where now he's going to make Christian music.
Yeah,
if that's a devil in sheep's clothing. So, David, I did. Oh, good.
Sorry. I have some thoughts on that. Because of this rebellion, because he's seeing a whole bunch of songs pop off in country music about God. I mean, Morgan Wallen has, you know, one of his top songs from his last album is wrote the book on it, right? And it's literally about the Bible and how we should really follow more of the red letters. And so there's a ton of other songs about that. Cody Johnson is popping off too. He's a really big, you know, Christian country artist. And so there's a trend going around that is, you know, if I talk about God, I'm going to get clicks and views. And I mean, I hope it's not that. I hope he's actually changing his mind and he's seeing the light. But it could just be a money grab. We'll see.
Yeah, either way, I think it's like we have the tendency on the right to like question everything a lot because we've been lied to a lot and we don't trust the media that we're fed often. So I think when we should let good things happen because they'll have a net good effect, and let God work on their heart if it's genuine or not. You know what I mean? Like, as long as they're putting out some sort of net positivity, I'm happy about it. But I think both people on the left and right have a tendency to like make heroes out of people, like what happened with the whole Oliver Anthony thing. You know, he was like the star boy for a minute, and then people started questioning him, and then same thing happened with Vivek. Like, it's like we don't need a messiah from these people. These are just human beings. You know what I mean? Like, we'll leave them to do human things, and if they're doing good, let's accept it and move forward and keep it happening. But yeah, I've been seeing so much more country music and so much more Christian music than before, and you know, that makes me happy. And it's interesting to see secular people talk about like, oh my God, I didn't know this was a Christian. I think there's a net good to it for sure, because there's the way that we ingest media and see so many things throughout the day. Most people may not do a full deep dive on something. So if they get that little 15-second clip or 30-second clip of positivity, I'm happy for it, you know?
Yeah, there's something else that I told Gentry about a while ago, but it's interesting, and I haven't heard anyone talk about this because this is so new. So this whole trans, sex change, whatever, it's new, right? And it's a cool thing. I think something like 20% of all children in school identify with being queer now. It's a cool thing, and it's anti what the parents were brought up to live like, right? Typically. So the next generation that grows up, so the children of these people that are pushing this issue so hard, the children are always going to rebel against what the parents do. The parents are never cool. Even massive celebrities say, yeah, my children don't think I'm cool. They like these other guys, right? When all this happens, these parents are pushing this ideology on the children are naturally going to want to rebel against their parents. What are they going to rebel into? And this goes along to what you were talking about. It's going to be people going towards religion again, towards conservatism. So I think they're doing themselves a massive disservice by, and I say them, by the people who are pushing this, because they don't understand that the natural inclinations of children are to do whatever the opposite of their parents is. And to add to that, there's going to be a lot of children, this is going to be extremely sad, that are going to hate their parents for transitioning them as a young child. Like, so much anger, murders, hate. I could just see the storylines in the future, and it's sad.
Absolutely. I think there's also going to be, we're already seeing it happen, but I feel like it's going to happen to a higher degree. I think there's going to be an explosion of interest in conservative faith systems like Catholicism, Orthodoxy, and Islam too, because I still think that's the fastest growing religion in the world right now. And then you have young right-wing-ish influencers converting to Islam publicly online and everything. So we're going to see a lot of people go into conservative belief systems. And listen, it's like, I don't know. I feel like I have more in common with a Muslim than I do a communist, right? Because there's at least a faith system there, and they believe in God, you know, something. But I think that it's so right to ask the question that they're going to be rebelling. Like, what are they going to be coming to? So that's why we need to be here to show that, you know, we will accept people, and also that we're not the cult you're coming to. You're actually escaping the cult. You know, you're actually leaving that hive mind. We'll let you be free.
Yeah. Well, this has been fantastic. I think we're going to wrap up. David, thank you so much for joining us on this show. It was a pleasure having you. We'll probably have you back on because I love the energy. I love what you're talking about. If you followed us this far, don't forget to follow David on social media. America David, I'll be tagging him on social media, Instagram.
Like American David.
American David, sorry, man.
Yeah,
American David.
No
and don't forget to like, subscribe, share, join the newsletter, all the things, because we are taking over at Breakaway USA. Thank you guys so much.
I love it. Thank you so much for having me. This was awesome. You guys are great. Thank you, Gentry.
Thank you.
Thank you.